So a few people actually did show interest in the difficulties recruitment idea, such as Mighty Goose and RyZeus here. Mighty Goose and I are both officers in the Devil's Brigade. We used to be a Hell at Loose clan. We are now General Gaming Discord. In theory, we are both the same rank. However, he owns the Discord. RyZeus here is a friend of mine who has Star Citizen servers as well as Arma servers. If both of you, Goose, if you give a bit of a rundown of your history of attempting to recruit people for video games.
Yeah, so essentially, joined the 20th Panzer Grenadiers in 2020 to play Hell at Loose, and eventually became a recruiter in the 20th Panzer Grenadiers. And that's essentially where I started trying to recruit people, and we can go through the process later. But that's pretty much my background. I worked my way up, become an officer. I eventually started running the group, and then, like Goblin said, we eventually left and made our own group, which I also continue to do recruiting, and I still actively try to do recruiting.
All right, Zeus.
Um, yeah, like you said, I haven't done any like Hell at Loose, units or anything like that. But I've got years and years of time since fucking early 20 2014. I would say I've been doing a lot of Arma. Started out doing Arma 2, then Arma 2 Op Arrowhead, and then now Arma 3. And here recently, a couple buddies of mine and I have been trying to get a collective Star Citizen unit going. Um, and just the amount of time and effort putting in over this past decade of trying to recruit people for all these different organizations and units. Uh, I've got 2 cents, I guess I could add as far as Hell Let Loose goes.
All right. So for myself, I joined 20th, which is the parent group, I guess is the worst way to put it, of the Devil's Brigade back in 2019. That's where I met Goose. I had been running as a lower level member mostly there due to lack of care. That's something else. But yeah, I had been working my way up as an NCO there before me, Goose, and almost all the other 20th members broke off and built Devil's Brigade for Hell at Loose before Hell at Loose took its nosedive in player count. And then we've pretty much pulled out of that game since then. We're hoping that other games such as BattleBit or Burning Lands, especially, get more popular or even off the ground in the first place, that we will transition over there eventually. But right now, that's not. We're kind of done with Hell Loose. Some of the problems I have seen with recruitment overall is that you're basically trying to get a bunch of random people online to care about a group of strangers that they don't really know and care about putting time and effort into that group for some sort of shared goal. As far as Hell Loose is concerned, it's two things mostly: seeding servers and also comp, which the issue is the majority of the player base in Hell Loose doesn't understand how to actually seed servers. They take it for granted because they just jump in ones that are already seeded. Or they also don't know what comp is. Like 90% of the player base doesn't even know Hell Loose has comp. Um, so the main problem is you have to go out there and find a bunch of random people that you're playing with and somehow convince them to join you. So when you're starting out, it's going to be very difficult because the best way to get recruits is if you already have a server that's already seated. But getting to that point is very difficult. So when you're recruiting people, you kind of have to take what you can get at first, which causes an issue of how open do you want the recruitment process to be? Like, how selective are you going to be? The main problem, you have to find a middle ground, because if you're way too open with it, you essentially get people that are called like room clears that for whatever reason either they're just massively like mean to people or hard to talk to for whatever reason. When they join a VC, they completely just push everyone out. Like, nobody will stay. People leave the voice channel and they stop coming back to the Discord because that person's there. So you have to have some restrictions and some sort of vetting process to get people like that weeded out so they don't get in there and ruin the community. On the flip side, the other problem is if you're too restrictive, you're not going to get any people and the community is not going to grow at all. I'm not really sure. We have never really found
Happy
a
medium
happy
in between.
medium at all. We haven't. We've in the 20th. I think we were too open, and that's why we had a couple
Well, do you want
splits
me to
in
go?
that, and
Let me
why we
explain the
broke
recruitment
off.
process. So in the 20th, essentially the process we had was you essentially apply to join the group, which we can get into later about how we get people to actually hop in. But the process was you apply to join the group, you fill out a Google document, and then that gets sent off to the recruiters. The recruiters would message you. They'd have to pull you into a room and have a kind of almost like an interview chat with you, show you a presentation, get you set up in the group, and then you would have to essentially have a 1 month trial period as a recruit, and you have to log a certain amount of hours hanging out in the Discord to become a full member. Now we found that process was very difficult to get members through because who wants to spend that much time in a Discord as not a full member? Where in the 20th case, we had certain channels blocked off for non-members they couldn't see. And this was actually an issue why we left and formed the Devil's Brigade. We wanted to be more of an open group. So we switched to the process of where we were still trying to wrangle people in, get them to fill out a Google document, but we would just message them, no interview, no presentation, tell them like, hey, we want to see you hang out over the next couple weeks for X amount of hours, or straight up, we thought they're a cool guy, we continue to game with them, we make them a member right away. So we've tried. I mean, I've tried. Goblin was also involved in this process of trying almost an extreme of each one, where it's like, if you're cool, we'll let you in. To also, we're going to be really strict and monitor the amount of hours, and we haven't been able to find a happy medium.
Both of them have issues. When we were in 20th, we were way too selective. Actually, that changed a lot over the years, and we never really found a happy medium. Although I think that was a higher issue than just how we were doing recruitment. These are all non-paid things that people are doing, by the way. Like this is all people are
Mhm.
doing
Oh,
this.
this is all.
This is
We used to
all
call it like
volunteer.
volunteering hours. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it takes a long time. It takes a lot of time, effort, and just people. It takes numbers to do these things. Like you can't just have one or two people running everything, which was an issue in 20th and one of the main reasons we split off because of the weight of everything would usually get piled on way too few people. And we all have jobs. Well, some of the people in 20 didn't, but we all have jobs. We all have social lives. We all have stuff that's going on. And it creates one of the main issues is that you can't just have somebody spend all their time on Discord. So who actually does these things is also a big issue. So you have to be able to find people who are willing to do recruitment and willing to actually be there and deal with the new people and go through a vetting process.
yeah, because the flip side of that is you can't just let everyone in without a vetting process, and you dilute your community with people that no one wants to be around. And then, like Goblin has said previously, it will clear the rooms, and that's not good for community growth because you're going to have people hanging out in the Discord that no one wants to be around, chat to, play with. So the happy middle ground is what we're trying to figure out, and we're still working on. But maybe maybe the possible point of this video is just kind of have open discussion about this kind of idea.
Yeah. Another thing to add into that as well, if you're too open, and I don't know if you guys run into this or not in Hell Let Loose, but we ran into it very early on whenever we were just allowing people to just join our unit willy-nilly, like with no sort of interview or anything like that. We would run into, we call them scalpers. So basically, people from other units would come to our unit to try and steal away members to like try to convince them like, hey, you should leave this unit and come join our unit instead. We're so much better. Blah 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 blah. And we would run into that issue fairly quickly early on, like years ago, and then we decided, hey, we need to have some sort of vet process before we allow people for free access or free reign to join our unit.
Yeah, I don't think we had that issue because a lot of the Hell Loose communities were all interconnected
That
through
Yeah.
used
like
to be an
joint. Yeah,
issue like back in
yeah,
19
it
and
used to be
20.
when. Yeah,
That was
but
an issue long time ago, but
yeah,
Hell Let
we pretty
Loose
much made
is
a.
really interconnected.
Yeah, like we all play in the same leagues. We all participate in weekly events together, and we all communicate. Like I know at least like of all the major, let's say there's like 20, 30 groups of Hell Loose. I
Yeah.
know at least 10 of the people that are in charge of the groups. I message with them, I chat with them, I socialize with them, so we have a good like intergroup relationships essentially.
Hmm.
Whereas like it's like, hey, this guy left your group and is applying to join our group. Like, what's his deal? And we can kind of give the lowdown about it, or if someone tries to scalp a player, it's kind of like a no-no within the Hell Loose community scene
Yeah.
because like
Yeah, pretty much all
that'll give you
groups
a
will
bad
find
look.
out about that. If you try
All
to
groups will find
scalp,
out.
yeah, if
Yeah,
one group finds out, there's a Discord just for like people who are server owners that and
there's
admins and
more
stuff.
more honor among the groups, I think, in Hell
Yeah,
Loose than
well,
what
it's
you're
not
talking
Yeah.
about.
necessarily honor. It's more that there's more
Respect.
accountability.
Yeah, accountability. Yeah, because we're all interconnected. Yeah, there's more
I,
accountability.
So
I think
if
it also
one
helps
person
too.
is like an outlier,
Yeah.
everyone's going to know about it.
I think it helps too, like, because as a casual player for myself, because like I said before, I'm not a part of any like organization or team in that regard for Hell Let Loose. I've noticed too, like out of all the video games, like online multiplayer video games I've ever played, like Hell Let Loose has such like an amazing community, like that, you know, you don't get that same type of camaraderie like anywhere else. Like I've seen more people in random games try to help newer players like better understand the game than anywhere else I've ever been as far as that goes.
I think a nice drawing point for Hell Let Loose is like the age range almost of people that are playing this game because it's not like a
Hmm.
fast-paced shooter like Call of
Oh
Duty
yeah.
or
It's a
Battlefield,
bit
aim
older.
for younger kids. Where this kind of genre of like Milsim kind of game is more for the older crowd or more mature crowd, where it takes patience to play a game. You need more thought about playing the game.
Hmm.
So I think, and especially from talking to other communities, a lot of these communities, their average age is like late 20s to like 40s, and like I think that's probably maybe a good sample maybe of the overall Hell Let Loose community where it's all guys that are like late 20s, 30s, 40s. We got a guy in our group who's in his 50s.
Hmm.
So like it's more mature players that are playing and we kind of understand like, hey, if there's new people playing, we need to kind of pass on our knowledge to keep this game alive.
Yep.
It's not just that. It's if somebody's playing that is really like new, there's a really steep learning curve to Hell Let Loose, and a lot of people they like getting the attention from people who are able when they're able to pass on knowledge. Others are just like, yeah, I hate seeing people who are so bad at the game it affects me because it's a very team focused game.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of incentive for more experienced players who have been playing for years to actually pass on the knowledge to new people for either attention or in my case, I really hate having other people make mistakes that cost me. So I want to bring people up to speed as quickly as possible so we can work better together. Other people also are doing it because, hey, I'm pretty good at this game. I'm giving you all this knowledge. How about you come join my group of other people who can help you, get better, which is also a recruitment thing. But I think the main reason for it is the more mature level of the game and people able to think past like the here and like the right here and now when they're playing and
Yeah.
go, hey, this person is struggling. If I help them, it helps the community, which in turn helps me. People think farther out in the future,
Yeah, they're thinking more of a strategic level than a tactical
Hmm.
level.
Yeah.
which gunfights still, I will maintain that gunfights are the most important thing to be good at that in that game, but you also still have to think about what you're doing. You can't just rush into everything because you will lose when you do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a very squad oriented game.
Yeah, it's like small unit level stuff is what makes the difference and in the team. Um, but yeah, so some of the things I've noticed that help recruitment. Moving on is you have to have some sort of hook, and there's a lot of them, but you have to have a hook and a couple other things. You have to have a Discord or a TeamSpeak. You have to have something that people can join into and
Mhm.
something people can join off of. So you basically need a server in the game that is up, populated, and with your members in it. You have to have people in there with your clan tag in their name. You have to have people representing you constantly that people can be like, "Oh, this sounds great. I want to like." You have to actually advertise it. And you can't just advertise it, you know, in some group chat. Someone's like, "Hey, come join this." You have to actually have it in game. You have to have people in game reinforcing it. And building that point is very difficult because you have to start somewhere, and if you don't find that happy medium, then you're not going to be actually built to the point where you're able to seed servers. And especially right now with the game population dropping off, it's gotten to the point where it's not really prudent to recruit and hell at loose. But that's just this game specifically.
Yeah.
Generally, you need to have something to build from, which means that once you have that, like you have to have a starting point. So you have to have like some group that's formed around you, which means that you have to have done like some building before you actually can really get the ball rolling. It's kind of a snowball effect, and not everybody's able to get the ball rolling. If you are, one of the main contributing factors I've noticed is you have to have some sort of hook, and the main hook I've noticed that most groups have in Hell Let Loose is either A, they have a YouTuber at the head, or at least a figurehead, who has tens of thousands of subscribers on YouTube, and they're able to bring in audience, so they're able to very quickly form a group because they have a lot of people that already are exposed to them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll do that." They already have a wide net to cast. And you also, the other thing I've noticed is if you're able to brand yourself with a very popular unit from history and be sort of a Milsim group, a lot more people will join that. And if you don't have either of those key ingredients, either A, you don't have a YouTuber with tens of thousands of subscribers and hundreds of thousands of views per video, your net that you're casting is going to be very small. And also, if you don't have, you aren't trying to associate yourself with, say, the 101st Airborne or, something like that, some sort of famous group that has movies made about it, you're not going to have a very like wide appeal because people when they get into a milsimi game, a lot of them want to go, "Oh, cool, First Armored or the Rangers," that sort of stuff. They want to. That's like eye popping for them. And if you don't have a YouTuber or you do not want to be a milsim, which 20th wasn't a milsim, even though it had a military name. Devil's
Had a
Brigade,
rank structure. Yeah.
yeah, we've gotten rid of that in Devil's Brigade. We went the opposite way of being a Milsim group. I think that's because of our higher veteran numbers in the community than average. I think, what is it, like half of our people are either military,
Military, police,
ex-military,
first responder,
police.
that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
like we have a very high ratio of people like that, and it's like if if that's your life, you don't really want to go home and continue to do that.
Yeah, or if you've done it previously, or like if you just straight up are just a grown man and you don't want to deal with a 20-year-old kid telling you what to do on the internet, it's a pretty
Yeah,
good option.
what was that thing that happened with? I'm not gonna name the group.
No,
I'm
there
not
was
gonna
a
name the
so there was a
group.
well, there was a guy that I recruited into our old group, the 20th, and he was a former military combat veteran, and he tried joining another group, and he had a like 18-year-old kid telling him he has to call him sir because he was an officer in the group, and this guy was like, absolutely not.
That's
I'm an
cringe.
experienced grown man, and he came to join us, and he fit in perfectly
Yeah,
because we don't
that's
do any of that. So I mean,
That is not
there's
the
a
that's
worst.
spectrum where
that's
like
so cringe.
The
especially
worst.
so there's a whole genre of these groups. I'm not going to name drop them, but some of them are essentially, yeah, where you have to like do like a basic training with them, and you have a rank structure, and you're organized into platoons and companies, and you have people above you, and they do like one life events,
It's
and like it appeals to some
it's just
people.
too much for a
Yeah,
lot of
there's
people.
like,
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like I'm
uh,
a grown man. I spend all day, doing a blue collar job. Do you think I want to come
Mhm.
home from work and say yes sir, boss sir to someone? Absolutely not.
yeah,
And
not doing that.
And I got a story to share in that regard too, because like a buddy of mine and a buddy of mine named Thad, him and I were early on. We were looking at joining possibly an army unit, and this was before we had ever started making our own units. We looked at a unit. I forget what they're called now. But we joined their team speak at the time, and we were getting to talk to this guy, and the recruiter that was there was like, "Hey, we need you guys to read this blue book for our unit, front and back. I'll send you the Google Doc." And we looked at the fucking blue book that he sent us, and it was like almost 300 pages long. That's insane. What type of person's gonna sit there and want to do like some light reading like that in order to join a video game unit to just fuck around and have a good time?
Yeah, it's a little bit too much for someone who just wants to play a couple hours a
Yeah.
week of, organized play.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. We
But I mean, people are drawn to it. There's a reason why they exist, but
yeah, there's
that's just
people
not the
that are drawn
It's
to
formula.
it.
it's such a niche thing though. Is
Right,
Yeah,
the
it's a niche thing and a niche thing, but a lot of the people that play Hella Loose are drawn to that sort of thing. Not most, but it's enough
Yeah.
that there's a lot of groups.
that they exist.
I'm not
Yeah,
gonna name the group, but we were partnered with one, and they had some of the cringiest things I've ever seen. They gave themselves like real military medals, like on their website. They would have a list. Goose knows who I'm talking about already. They had a list of like they would give themselves like purple hearts and
they
bronze
had
stars and
weapons
shit. Yeah, it
qualifications.
was so cringe, so cringe. They also had like you had to ask permission to speak from a superior in the Discord. They would always be like PTS, like granted, and then they would talk like you were in fucking formation or some shit. And then they would
They would have
also
their people stand in formation prior to a game
yes,
starting.
the worst. Here's the craziest thing I saw. One of the dudes like talked back or didn't listen. He did something to piss someone that ranked higher than him off in a practice. So what he made him do was walk the entire edge of the map during the practice, ADSing. And if you don't know why that's ridiculous, Hella Loose maps are fucking huge, and you
What
move a
the
lot
hell?
slower when you're ADSing. So this dude, for like an hour of his life, spent his time walking around an entire map just ADSing with his rifle. And I'm gonna be honest, if I got told to do that,
That's not me. I'm not doing that.
I would leave the Discord. I would
Yeah.
straight be like, nah, fuck you guys.
There ain't no way.
There's no fucking way you're making me do that. I would just leave the Discord. It was the cringiest thing. Not the cringiest thing I've seen in my life, but it's up there.
It's up there. It's like top three,
That
top
is
five,
that is a
maybe.
yeah, that is a top 10 cringe moment of all time I've seen in my life. Like holy shit.
At that point, like you might as well like if you're that serious about things like
The
that, you
dude
might as
did
well
it
just go
too.
join the military.
The
Just go
dude
join the
did it.
military. He did it?
He did it.
Why?
I don't know. Like I don't know who it was. It wasn't part of our group. It was part of a group we partnered with. And
Live your best life, I guess. Pop
like
pop off.
in hindsight, I wish I had like remembered who it was so I could go ask him like, "Bro, why did you do that?
What was going through your mind?
Are you okay? Do you need someone to talk to? Like what's going on, man?
Yeah,
Like
that's like the
why?"
ultimate extreme of the sample of groups.
It was bad.
Yeah.
It was really bad watching. And they were so bad at the game too. Like the 20th
Oh,
at the
you're talking.
time, yeah, the 20th at the time had like fallen off and we couldn't field enough people to do 50v50s. So
Yeah.
we partnered with another group. I'm not going to name them still, but we partnered with another group, and I remember I was a squad leader doing this, like in the game. Like that wasn't like an official rank, it was like a role. So I would be in charge of a squad, and we'd be given a certain sector of the map that we were supposed to control. And I remember every single game we did that, my squad of 20th guys would hold, and then like on my flank there'd be another squad of 20th guys, and they would hold, and they would usually be at least holding, if not winning their gunfights. You know, like we wouldn't fold. And next thing I know, they're coming through on the flank, like the flank that was supposed to be held and like the area is supposed to be controlled by our partnered group would just like disintegrate upon contact with the enemy. And he's like, "Oh, we're surrounded. Cool. That fucking wonderful." Like, god damn it. Ah, it was so bad. It
I,
was.
I think I think we're getting a little off topic for
We
the
are.
for the
We
video.
are.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
It was just so ridiculous. What what things have y'all seen that actually work as far as recruitment goes, Goose?
Okay, so the process that we used, so essentially we'd either recruit in game or we would advertise our group. So I'm gonna start with the advertising the group, and I'll go back to the recruiting in game. So there's an official Hell Let Loose Discord where each community was allowed to post like a sales pitch essentially every 24 hours. So we had our sales pitch kind of written in there like, hey, this is our group, this is what we do, this is how many servers we have, whatever, and that would get posted every 24 hours in the Hell Let Loose Discord. Our information and our sales pitch was also like on Reddit, and it was on a thing called Discord. So like if people Googled like Hell Let Loose groups to join, they would be able to find it somewhere. That's how I found the 20th initially. Now, so that would draw people in. Now the other way we would draw people in is we'd meet someone in game. We would either befriend them on Steam, kind of keep playing with them, and then invite them to the group, or we kind of like, hey, hop in our Discord, get them to hop in our Discord, and then we'd start with the process that I outlined earlier. So, but I think the most effective way was actually playing games with people, talking to them, and just being a good dude, kind of getting the feel for them, and then inviting them to come hang out in the Discord. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
I've
But you
always
don't hit.
found that the second one was by far the superior method.
Oh, 100%, 100%. I think talking to someone and even like, oh, you should join. It's more like, hey, hop in our Discord, come hang out, see what we're all about, and then if they feel like they like us, then they'll kind of apply to join. That's the best way that I found.
Zeus?
No, I think you guys pretty much hit the nail on the head, especially Goose there. Like, First Star Citizen and mostly Arma 3, because you have such a larger population of players to recruit from. We there there are certain websites and message boards and Reddits that you can definitely put recruitment ads up onto, and hope that people travel to those sites in order to find a new home or a place to go to as far as joining organized units and organizations. But the biggest thing that we've always found is the biggest thing for recruiting new players into our group was just going to different like public games and matches and stuff, that as long as those servers allow in their rules for you to be able to recruit people from that server, to just be like, hey man, you ever think about joining such and such organization and playing organized games and things like that with a group of guys that are chill and like to have fun. So that pretty much hit the nail on the head right there as far as that goes.
Yeah, I think that the personal connections are the most important thing to building groups. Like, you have to have something to hook to bring people in, but you also
Hmm.
have to be able to like keep them around, which is why you want the vetting process so you don't get the room clears, so that you get usually people with at least similar mindsets, and not I'm not talking just about like
Game wise, like
politics.
no, I'm just saying like personality wise, like the
Yeah,
Yeah.
guys that you want to chat with, you want to not just play games. Like I want to kind of say like our group, we've done a meetup in person where we had was like 16, 17 of us in person for a weekend, hanging out, doing stuff. A lot of these guys, I have them on like social media. We send memes to each other. I got guys like we Snapchat and we chat, and like I talk to my online buddies equally as much as I talk to my real life friends. That's because we've built a connection of like just hanging out and being good
well, we
dudes
are
and
like
playing
real
together
life
over the last
friends
like three
now.
years. That's what I mean. I know now, but I'm saying like the kind of like community you build, the core group of people that you have, kind of sets the precedence for the rest of the place. And if you kind of have a good group of dudes, like it's pretty successful to build off that. It's just getting that and then getting people to be consistent is the other issue.
Yeah, I from our core group, I think most of them have met each other at least once, like in
Yes.
person. There's a few local for me that I used to hang out with weekendly. One of them has moved to a different city. Um, After the meetup we had last August, there's already like a talk of the next one. We have another one planned already.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I've gone on vacation to the other side of Canada, and I met up with another guy, and I met his wife, and we had lunch together. There's another guy who lives a couple hours away from me. We go golfing together. We meet in the middle. We go camping together now. So like having that kind of real
right.
life thing going on helps
Oh yeah.
build the group.
But a
I
big
mean,
thing about it is just finding people who are similar, like personality wise.
oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing too, because we've had a lot of issues where people like, we'll game with them, they kind of game good, and then they don't kind of gel with the rest of the members and our mindset, or
Mhm.
specifically sometimes our humor, and that kind of creates issues.
At the end of the day, like I would much rather prefer have someone like be in our group or our organization that sucks at playing the video game, but is so fun to be around.
Yes. Yeah.
That's such a, I would say, a much more important factor. Like, um, I mean, for example, like you said, with having dudes that like you play with that you hang out with in real life, outside of the game. Like, one of my longest term buddies, like a dude that I'm super close with, even to this day. Like, I met him in high school playing Arma 2 Op Arrowhead, and we're still friends to this day, a decade later. I mean, he was the best man at my wedding and all that, which is just a wild, thing to think about. At the end of the day, is just like, being a kid back then playing video games with a guy who lived halfway across the country, and now skip ahead to today. He was the best man at my wedding. He's moved up here, to the same state as me. I mean, I helped him get his apartment and the job up here when he moved up here from Texas. Like, it's just such a wild thing. The internet's just a wild place to be on.
It is. I've noticed on the topic of getting people you'd rather play with than the skilled. I'm still not gonna name names, but one of the best players I've ever seen Hell Let Loose was
Hmm.
not a great person, and we ended up having to ban him like entirely from our shit. On the flip side, if you've ever, I know fucking Zeus hasn't, but Goose, have you seen like the community type issues in some of the better groups that perform better in like comp? Have you seen how like fractured they're
It's
like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm saying like our group, obviously, the Devil's Brigade fractured off the 20th Panzer Grenadiers, but we took 99% of the people and we left like five guys. I think that's a special case, but some of these larger groups break off the larger groups. Essentially, there's a couple core groups that have been around from the beginning of Hell Let Loose. They'll build up enough members, and those members will kind of fracture and create their own groups. And then that same main group will build up a bunch of guys, and more guys will break off. And so I think a lot in the Hell Let Loose community is these groups that are just like people infighting or disagreeing and breaking off, and they form more groups and more. That's why there's like 20 to 30 groups.
There's
Where in the
constant
beginning,
splits. There's well,
constant
also in the
splits.
beginning there was like a fraction of the player base, and then it
Yeah,
jumped into like a year ago when it was 10 times what it was when we started playing.
yeah, I can't speak for them saying I don't know how their core group of members are on like friendly terms and getting along. But from an outside perspective, seeing all these groups fracture all the time, is I don't think they have a good enough like relationships within as I think our group does.
Yeah.
Well, every time I've gotten a peek behind the curtain, which is like very infrequent, and not like from them like interacting with us in sort of a diplomatic type way of trying to set up scrims or Friday night fights or something like that. But when I'm actually playing with them,
Mhm.
a lot of the times I'll see that they don't necessarily get along that well, which honestly at this point, like a lot of these groups and a lot of the like clan leaders, the leaders have been around in the community for years. Like if you go into a game and you see two people who are above level 250, there's a good chance they've played together before in some capacity. Like it's
Yeah.
not like 50, but there's like a 30% chance that if you see two people with like the eagle fucking that there's probably a 20 or 10 to like 20% chance that they actually know who the other person is, because these groups they all built around like the same few core groups, and then
Hmm.
those groups will split off. And it's happened so many times. I think it's a lot of the people who are making these groups
Hmm.
have understood the idea that they have to like to get bigger, they're going to risk a split by
Hmm.
just letting people in. And basically these groups, from what I've seen, they'll let anybody, pretty much anyone, join, and then they'll filter out from there. Um, they'll like basically cast that really wide net, and what that causes is people that have not just different political ideologies, different religions, no religion, but they'll have such conflicting personalities that splits seem to be inevitable in any group that grows below above what, like 70, 80 people.
Yeah.
Like, of if you have more than, I don't I'd say even less than that. If you have like 50 fucking concurrent players that are all the Discord more than once a week.
People form cliques, and then that
Yeah,
was kind of
I've noticed that other Discords seem to be way more clicky than ours, whether that's because of our relatively comparatively small size. We're not the smallest group out there, even though we don't even have a server anymore, but we're definitely not like the people that came over from 20th that actually came with us. We're all really tight knit. There's
well, that's
we
the
don't
thing, yeah, because like there's different like let's say like cliques or people in our groups, but anyone could jump from any different group and still get along and chat with everyone.
right,
Yeah.
and the few people that didn't, we got rid of, and we don't
Yeah,
really have a lot of people falling off.
no, no, not as much as we did in the 20th.
That was
So
different. Yeah.
So as far as Armicide goes, we actually in my unit that I'm with found an effective way to kind of deal with any sort of issues or arguments or anything that may pop up because you're playing a game and a lot of people nowadays, like especially me, I know when I play video games, like I like to get invested emotionally and mentally into the video game because I'm having a good time, I'm having fun, and sometimes emotions and tempers can fly in that regard. And an effective thing that we've implemented or started doing is myself and another guy, because we're pretty, well, a lot of the people that we play with consider us to be very fair and unbiased individuals. And so me and another guy, we've implemented this thing in our unit where we help deal with any arguments or anything. So, say two people get into a fight with one another, or there's bad blood between two or multiple individuals, we'll come together and sit down with those guys, and we'll go, "Hey, what's going on? Like, tell us what's going on in your head, and then you tell us what's going on in your head, and how can we resolve this and get past this?" Because at the end of the day, we're just a bunch of guys that are getting together to play a video game and have a good time. We don't really need to, you know, fight or have any issues with one another. So I don't know how effective that type of strategy could be as far as Hell at Loose unit going, or a gaming community like you guys have going on. When you start getting more and more individuals in that, you know, the potential of clickiness arising and things like that.
Well, that goes back to the idea of how open you want to be and how stringent, not necessarily stringent, how specific of a type of member you want is.
Yeah,
And the more open the group, the more issues, the more closed the group. Well, obviously, it's going to be more issues, but it's going to be more people. The more closed group, there's going to be less people, but less issues.
hmm,
And that's if you have something that's drawing people in the first place, which
yeah,
is an entirely different thing. But in summary, it's difficult to bring people in because you have to have some sort of hook that gets people interested. You have to have some sort of infrastructure for them to play on, such as Discord, a server to play in, and organized events.
yeah,
And then you have to figure out how open or closed you want to be. So you have to figure out not only what type of people you want in there, but how to make sure you don't get the bad apples in the first place.
yeah.
And after that, you have to figure out how to retain them. Overall, it's a giant issue,
I think
especially when,
retention is the biggest issue.
yeah, retention's pretty difficult. But this video is long enough, and we've already hit on retention pretty good.
Yeah. If I had to leave it at anything for like, if I had to say one word that pretty much describes the overall arc of said video, I would say it all pretty much comes down to luck.
Well, there are things you can
Yeah,
do to gradually increase your luck. Not everything's going to be within your control, such as not having a really good hook if you don't want to For example, there's certain like trends you can jump on, which in Hell Let Loose would be the Milsim, which we don't really want to do. So if we did that, we could get. I think we build a lot more people, but our current player base, the founders and the core members of the group wouldn't like it. Um, or you could have some sort of thing that really draws people in, like you have some sort of fame for whatever reason. For example, like you have a member of the group or the leader of the group who has a large social media presence that also gets your name out there. If you don't have either of those, it's very difficult to generate luck, to generate traffic into your player base.
Yeah.
And then retaining them is also difficult. Um, that was a pretty long video. I appreciate anyone who's still watching at this point. Mightygoose and RyZeus also have some of their own content that they're releasing. I will put links to that in the description. If you could go over what all you have and what you actually release, Goose.
Yeah, so another founding member of the Devil's Brigade and I, Harry, we have our own podcast called The Worst Is Yet to Come. And it's essentially a podcast where we talk about history, politics, philosophy, and Christianity, any other interesting subject we want to talk about. So we're on, Instagram, Facebook. We have a website. We're on Spotify, iTunes, all that kind of stuff. So just look up The Worst Is Yet to Come and check out an episode.
And Zeus.
Not too much going on as far as YouTube and Twitch go. I'm trying to work on getting my Twitch back up and running. Was kind of dead there for a year while I was getting settled into the new home and, wife and all that type of stuff. But I will be working on getting back into Twitch again. I'll be live streaming, new and upcoming games, whether it be single player or multiplayer. The biggest things right now here in my life are probably going to be Star Citizen and other RTS games that I enjoy.
All right, cool. Again, I'll put those in the description. Thank you very much for showing up. Anyone that has listened this far, thank you very much for listening. That's all we got. Thanks and bye.